Hi, I want to talk you through some of the things that you should be doing in week 14 of the class. It might feel like an especially busy week because you're beginning project 4, starting to translate your argument in project 3 into an infographic. You're wrapping up project 3 and doing some final revisions on that. And we know in the next couple weeks you'll be working on project 5, the final project for the class. And so I'm going to try to give you some tips on things to help you finish up Project 3 and start working on Project 4 in this video today. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of notes from one of my face-to-face classes. The class had a conversation on introductions in the researched argument essay, and my question to them was, as a reader of an argument, what are your expectations in the introduction? What do you expect to find there? What will help you read through the rest of the text? And so before we looked at some samples, students in the class mentioned these things over here, that they needed to have a sense of what the topic is. There should be a claim clear in the introduction. That should be a strong statement, not a question like you used in the beginning of the iSearch paper, but a statement formulated after the claim templates in Chapter 6. They expect to find background on the topic. A reader needs to be set up for whatever they need to know to understand your argument. So if you were reading through some of the outlines, they mention things like address the larger conversation around the issue or some of the perspectives. This might be where you include key definitions of terms or give some historical perspective. So that seemed important to them. We had a little discussion on the idea that your opening sentence needs to grab attention. I asked the class to think about the fact that this is not like maybe when you're giving a speech and you want a wow statement right at the beginning. Instead, what your opening sentence needs to be very purposeful. So it could be surprising, it could be a really interesting quote or statistic, but it could also just be something that helps the reader understand the topic and relate immediately to what is happening in the paper. The sense of who the audience is should be clear in the introduction, and the type of argument should be evident. So if it's going to be a proposal essay, then we need to know in the beginning that there's some sort of problem that you're looking to solve. A couple other things that might pop up in the introduction. We might see a map of the essay. Some of the claims that you're writing are set up to provide a map of the essay. So in a proposal argument, there's a because clause in that claim, and those reasons would be things that you would explain throughout the body of the essay. In an evaluation argument, you're including some criteria in the claim, and those criteria would help you map out a lot of the essay. So providing a map of where you're going to take the reader through the project can be helpful, especially in a longer text like an argument essay or research paper. Finally, we talked about the need to have a sense of why this topic matters, whether that's from a personal perspective to start with and then broadens to why the audience should care about it. We need to know that in the beginning of an essay. We took a look at a couple of examples of introductions and talked about some things that were working and weren't working, just to add to this list. So these are other things to pay attention to when you look over your introduction of Project 3. One is that the intro is your chance to establish your ethos right away. You could do that through personal examples that show how you relate to the topic. You could do that through being able to provide specific accounts or examples that show that you know and can prove that the issue is real and problematic, or however you need to present that. What didn't help ethos in the drafts was when writers presented a limited perspective on the issue. So when it was clear that they hadn't done a lot of research or really weren't very familiar with examples, or when they weren't paying attention to their style of writing, to their tone, their vocabulary, and their diction. They lost readers right away, and readers didn't care about reading the rest, or it felt like too much work to keep going on in the essay. So we don't always talk about like the clear and effective writing part of the rubric as having to do with your ethos, but it absolutely does. Finally, another thing that they thought worked was when the audience could relate to the topic, and sometimes that was a place to include appeals to pathos. And things that didn't seem to work well was when already in the first paragraph there were problems of organization and redundancy. So sometimes that first paragraph really like gets you going in your draft, but you end up having to go back and do a lot of fine tuning on it, cutting out things that really aren't important for getting you where you're going in the project. So you're going to want to pay attention to those things. Another thing I want to talk through quickly is this revised rubric for Project 3. This is the rubric I'm using for grading Project 3. The qualities in it are not different from the rubric that's in the project description. They're just rephrased and kind of streamlined into 4 categories instead of the longer list of questions. I would encourage you to use the rubric that's in the assignment description as a checklist to help you think through whether you've accomplished those things in your project, and then you could also review this rubric, which I'll post in the week 14 materials to be able to look through where you think you're going to fall on grading. So we've got our 4 categories: excellent papers, 95%, acceptable, 85%, needs revision, 70%. And then if something is poor or missing, there's kind of like a range of where that might fall. Instead of breaking the content into introduction, body, and conclusion, I've put that all together and thought about the main things that I'll be considering and how to bring them together. So again, the acceptable column are the benchmarks that I expect everyone to meet in this assignment. Those include things like writing a clear claim, providing needed background on the topic, supporting statements with appropriate examples and research, and including discussions of counter-arguments. This part right here, supporting statements with appropriate examples and research, is not a small piece. That's like the huge, major part of your argument. So it's just one short sentence or clause here, but it's a big piece. Particularly strong essays will be essays where the writer develops ethos through strong research selections and examples, and clearly addresses and persuades their intended audience through effective rhetorical moves, including a development of strong logos through their research. So those will be not just following the moves, the general moves of the argument essay that the student is writing, but doing that in a very convincing way. I do have a couple of deal breakers on this assignment. Things that if you miss them in the project, you will not get higher than a 70% or a C-. And one of those is in the content section. If you don't include discussions of opposing viewpoints or counter-arguments, you won't earn higher than a 70%. The outlines in Chapter 6 show you where to include discussions of opposing viewpoints or alternative perspectives or counter-arguments, and so you want to make sure that you include that. That's really what makes it an argument essay and not an informative research paper. Formatting, same thing. I have another deal breaker there. If you do not include in-text citations, you cannot earn higher than a 70% on the assignment. My expectation is that you'll consistently use MLA formatting and citation, and ideally, if you're doing good proofreading on your projects, you can do that with no error as well. Organization, I expect that you follow the outline provided in Chapter 6. I understand that there are places where you might have to be a little bit flexible with that, but I should be able to see that fine because your paragraphs will be organized around main ideas, and you'll use transitions to help the reader move from one paragraph to the next. A stronger paper in terms of organization will very thoughtfully map the essay in the introduction and to help the readers read through the paper, and we'll use skillful and stylistically strong transitions and not just basic transitions. And then clear and effective writing, I expect that you revise edit and proofread your sentences so that your ideas are clear and without distracting error. So you can review both the rubric and the project description to use as a checklist to make sure you're covering all your bases on the major moves you should be making in the paper. And then this is the piece that I'll use when I'm grading. Finally, in the Project 3 folder, I have a submission portal for your Project 3 final draft, and that is due by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, December 6th. So you have, the week to work on it, to ask me more questions, to come see me in office hours if that's helpful. And this is where you will submit that. One of your steps for this week is to check out Piktochart.com, which is a site that you can decide to use to create your infographic. I have not gone into this yet, so I'm going to check it out with you for just a minute here. Notice that you can use this for free, and that is my expectation, that you're not signing up to pay for this program, but that you're using the free templates and features that they have. So when I go into sign in, I can decide whether I want to sign in with Facebook or my Google account or just make my own username. And so that's what you'll do. Go to create your account and then check out the free features that are in there. Spend a little bit of time using that this week. They have templates available for you to use so you don't have to figure out how to organize everything in your infographic, although thinking about organization is a really key piece of this project. But it might be helpful to start there by checking out some of those templates, and then maybe looking at those, you can decide how you want to work on organizing your own infographic for the project. I did come up with a couple of questions to help you start thinking through Project 4, and so it would be a great idea, I think, to take out a piece of notebook paper when you have about half an hour to spend brainstorming for Project 4 and work through notes on these questions. What is the argument I'm presenting? What pieces of evidence or other information from my essay are the most important and compelling pieces of information for a general audience to understand my topic? Remember that here you're moving from that specific audience that you were addressing to a broader audience that could now learn about your topic. So what's going to really matter to them? Which pieces of information should be central to the visual document that you're creating? And which pieces should be supporting or peripheral? How do you want to organize it? How do you want to use layout? How will you use color and text to highlight key ideas? And how will you use images in your infographic to support your argument? So those are things to start brainstorming and working on. Take some notes on those things. Look through your draft of Project 3. As you're revising Project 3, you can be starting to pull out ideas for working on Project 4 and kind of piecing that together. No reason why you can't kind of do them both at the same time because they're on the same topic. If you have questions on either assignment and you want to send me detailed questions or come see me in office hours this week, please make the time to do that. We're really close to the end of the semester, which means that everyone is still really busy and may have questions, but also hopefully you're finding yourself motivated to do a good job in these final weeks. Have a great week.